When Kyle Rittenhouse came to Kent State, and by the way, I'm kind of glad I let in with the other one because now we got a few more people, on board here.
Yes.
Um, trying to get my mouse going. All right. The young acquitted murderer is being paraded around campuses to stir up controversy. I mean,
Name
somehow,
a more oxymoronic headline.
that's like
Mm.
acquitted murderer.
Like, so not a murderer. that's
Mhm.
that's
Oh,
isn't that what
Okay.
acquitted murderer means? Like they cancel each other out.
Well, okay. So what do you think about though, like O.J. Simpson? I mean, that's what they think of, right?
No, yeah, I get it. They're just saying like a person that many people think is guilty of murder, but was ultimately acquitted.
And and by the way, I keep telling people, look, we didn't have video of O.J. Simpson defending himself against Nicole.
Oh yeah, I would have said if you had as much video evidence that Kyle Rittenhouse defended himself as like what OJ did, I mean, it would be. I mean, there wouldn't even be an argument. He
Right.
would either be definitively guilty or definitively innocent based on the video evidence.
yeah. So
And
are
eyewitness.
people saying that Nicole attacked OJ? Is that what they're saying?
No, no, no. I'm just saying that
No,
for
So
it would be synonymous if that is actually what happened, right?
yeah,
yeah,
but
it
I tell
it
people, it's Kyle got attacked and OJ was the attacker, so it's opposite.
well, it's the idea that you can be an acquitted murderer, right? Like
Mhm.
that sounds oxymoronic, but like, does anybody really think OG was innocent? Think a lot of people are like, no, we don't really think
Yeah.
that. Uh, so I mean, that's what they're implying. Like, even though he was
Hmm.
acquitted, he was guilty somehow, which
Yeah.
doesn't really make sense based on any of the evidence or what happened at the trial.
Mm.
But they can roll with it. That's fine. And people like you can keep making fun of them on the internet.
Oh, it says here, by the way, his speaking engagements are a bit of a joke. I support him, but he should get his education handled and try to just live a normal lifestyle. Comments?
I have talked about this before, and I'll talk about it more as we go through this article.
Okay, good deal. And let's see here. He has to get his story 100% straight. He wants to keep telling it at these campuses. Can't name any of the inconsistencies of her based off the top of my head, but I've noticed, I'm sure, not the okay. So, in other words, Kyle has a tendency to contradict himself. Maybe I don't know for sure because I haven't heard that, but I don't doubt it. I mean,
I haven't heard the last speech or I
okay.
haven't heard the last one, so I'm not sure what the inconsistencies were.
Well, I mean, if you guys have
Me
any idea
neither.
what those inconsistencies are out there in viewer land, pop them into the chat. I'm more than happy to field them. I might be able to clear them. I don't know.
My Yeah, my guess is that he's working with like the TPUSA people to just like to go over kind of like the story of what he's going to tell. And once you're trying to tell like a grand story to entertain an audience, like you're
Hmm.
going to have embellishments here and there. Like it's just going to happen. It has to happen, or else you're. Why are you up there talking? Nobody wants to listen to you just to repeat the things that they could have already read online.
Well, we saw that with his book, right? He claimed in his book that Joshua Zeminski was pointing a gun at him. Well, that's the first I've heard that.
Yeah.
And and I have a video on it saying that is not a good idea to come out with that in a book. But I mean, his lawyers approved it, but I don't know. I'm not. I don't know about his lawyers. I really don't.
Yeah, no, like, well, he could easily say, well, the reason he's saying that is because after the fact, he knows that he shot a bullet in the air behind him, and he didn't have any way of knowing that it wasn't pointing at him. He thought it was pointing at him, so he's going to say it was pointing at him.
Okay, so he says here, I believe at Kent, he said Huber's knee was on his chest. I think I heard that too.
Oh yeah. Um, You know what? I do know that he was pulling it, and I don't know, it might have been on his chest. I gotta check because I saw him because there's like multiple different pictures, and another one where he was like going down on Kyle. So it might have been on his knee. So I gotta double check that.
A knee might
Well,
have touched his chest for a little bit, but if you
Yeah.
slow down time, like he probably could think in his head, he could
Yeah.
probably justify it. That's the kind of things I'm talking about. I'm sure is happening when he's giving these speeches. Like,
Mhm.
and I'm sure that he's getting help with the speech writing.
well, I'll be honest with you. Whatever help he's getting, he needs more help because
Yep,
his speeches are dull.
yep, they're not very
Sorry,
good.
Kayla. I know Kayla's out there going, "Oh, I got to log in and
Yeah.
defend Kyle," but no, they're pretty dull. You know,
Didn't
sometimes they're
Yellow
good.
didn't Yellow Pants point his gun at Kyle and his group first, according to Joanne Fiedler?
Yes, he had a couple of guns. It was in her testimony.
Yeah.
He was saying that they had a couple of guns. They pointed the guns first, and
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody in their group pointed the gun. But when he said, when Yellow Pants said that you pointed the gun, he was going like this down. He didn't do this. He went that.
Yeah.
You were pointing your gun at me like this. So
By
he
the
was
way, I
putting it down.
invited Grambo to come on tonight, but I don't think she's going to be able to make it. I think she's a little
Mm.
tired.
Um,
Okay, so let's go ahead and read here. Kyle Rittenhouse, the teenager who shot 3 people, killing 2 and injuring the third during a Black Lives Matter protest in 2020 in Kenosha, Wisconsin, spoke on April 16th at an event sponsored by the spoke on April 16th at an event sponsored by the right-wing organization Turning Points. That's not the right name. It's Turning Point, right? Is it Turning Point USA or Turning Point?
It's Turning Point USA,
Yeah.
Yeah.
not Turning Points. Turning Point. There's one
Well,
point where things turn.
just 1 point, no S.
Yep.
and I have a question for you, Zach. Have you ever heard of a period? I mean, this sentence goes on forever. Held at Kent State University in Ohio. And by the way, he did respond to my um, criticism on Twitter.
Yes, I
I told
noticed
him it
that.
was boring. And he said, "Well, Kyle is a boring person. Then why write the article? You have a boring article about a boring person, probably shouldn't be published." Okay, Rittenhouse, 17 at the time of the shooting. Okay, a little tip out there um, for writers. You already said the teenager, and now you're telling us he was 17. There's no need for that. It's redundant. A little editing would really help this article. Is now 21 and makes money as a TPUS speaker. Oh my God, he makes money as a TPUSA speaker traveling from college to college, stirring up controversy and creating publicity for the group.
Yep.
In a previous
And
speaking, go ahead.
I was just gonna say this is where I chime in with the the commenter said is like, whose fault is it that there's a demand for Kyle to come speak, right? Whose fault is it?
Question.
It's not right wingers.
Yeah.
It's the people that lied about him and still insist today that he was a wicked person that day and that the judge got it wrong, was somehow compromised. Like those people's funny. That's why he's popular. That's why he's able to do these speaking engagements. The fact that people show up to protest, it's keeping him in the public eye. Like they're they're the ones that are propping him up.
I should make a mention here. It says, "Does he big up the sling?" That's a tactical sling. It's fearsome. Okay. In a previous speaking engagement, a separate TPUSA event in Tennessee, he was heckled so badly that he had to leave the stage. Okay. I mean, from a certain person's standpoint, I can see that. According to a source with TPUSA, he earns $5,000 for each 30-minute talk. Okay, a little lesson here about writing. Here you mention how much he earns. Here you talk about him making money. Why don't you connect those together?
Wasn't he on a time limit anyway?
Yeah, I think
30
so.
minutes.
Yeah.
And yeah, that would maybe one of the reasons why they moved him off. Obviously, the crowd is going to think they're going to take credit for it, right?
They also
Yeah.
think that's a lot of money.
Yeah, five
Like,
thousand for a 30-minute talk.
well, yeah, to travel to a campus to go through all the stuff, like it's not a 30-minute talk. Like it's not 30 minutes of work that he's
No.
doing. It's a whole week of planning. I'm sure it's a
Mhm.
decent amount of money, but I worked on the student union board when I was in college. I was on the comedy and concert committee, so we actually hired bands to come in, and like bands that you would think are not really, I mean, they're like moderately popular. They're gonna charge you like $15,000 to come to your campus. Like a comedian, like I think Ed Helms wanted 10 grand to come do a 1 hour set. Like that's the kind of prices you're talking about when you're dealing with any kind of college event. And that was back in 2002 through 2005.
Well, I mean, and my question would be, who cares? It's
Yeah,
none of your concern. This is TPUSA paying it.
Mhm.
true.
Like,
Well, and even if the college was paying it, that's what I'm saying. Colleges pay a lot of money to get people to speak at their campuses. It's a lot.
mhm. By the way, the same people that are probably all upset about this see no problem with President Claudine Gay from Harvard pulling about 900,000 and doing essentially no work. Oh, have you seen her latest the course she's teaching next? Reading and research. Yeah, she's teaching a course at Harvard on how to do research. The one who was busted for plagiarism. I'm telling you.
Yeah, don't send your kids to college. At least not Ivy League schools for things that aren't related to STEM.
Okay, he earns. Okay, so he makes money. So what? That's what makes the world go round. Rittenhouse and his family have been fundraising. What? Rittenhouse and his family have been fundraising relentlessly for legal costs before and after his acquittal. His mother, for example, appeared on InfoWars in 2020 and begged Alex Jones's audience for cash. So this whole thing about asking money, they have no trouble doing the give send go for all their little deals, right? But when somebody from the right side of the spectrum does it, oh, this is begging. They're grifting. It's-
Yeah, it's just a way to like paint it in like the whole article is just trying to paint everything he's doing in a negative light. Like, oh, and he's asking for money for this. Like, heaven forbid, like he's had ridiculous legal expenses in his past, and like the only thing he has going for him is that, I mean, to make money, really, to market himself, is that the same people writing this article continue to make him out to be a martyr to everybody that disagrees with them, which creates a demand for him to go on campuses and give speeches. So, I mean, I don't blame him for taking the money. Like, I don't like it. I wish he would have just faded away. I thought after he got acquitted, like 2 months later, this was a topic we could just drop. We'd stop talking
Mhm.
about. But years later, still, like Kyle Rittenhouse is used as some sort of proxy for Trump, and I just don't get it. I don't get it.
you know, so who's really at fault? Because I think the left could come in and say, look, the only reason why we hate him is because he won't go away. So which one comes first, the chicken or the egg? How much of this
Uh,
is brought on by Kyle?
No, I think the left starts it because they could ignore it. It's really them driving his popularity. As soon as they ignore it, the right stops caring because they're just like, okay, this is not a cause of the left anymore.
Mhm.
If I'm a civil defense counsel, and it's Mark Richards, by the way, I'd argue contradictions don't matter because the video tells the full story. Yeah, there's some of that. Keep in mind, they're going after this. Kyle was involved in a conspiracy with the police deal. So they're not going to claim in civil court that Kyle was guilty of murder so much. It's that Kyle's behavior and his involvement with the police is what caused all this to start with. So it's a different argument.
which is insane. But
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Like when you ask me like what came first or like who's really causing this, like who is going like they're digging that deep in order to keep the story alive. It's not the right.
Okay. Yeah, they didn't know. A lot of people don't know JoJo's history at all. Let's see here. Okay, so let's move on here. Kyle also lent his name to and appeared in ads for a video game titled Kyle Rittenhouse's Turkey Shoot, where people could shoot fake news turkeys.
I've seen that.
He's just bringing back old news.
Well, yeah. I mean, what do you think about the fake news turkey thing? I mean, I have videos on it.
uh, I didn't really have a problem with it. Like he didn't make the game or conscript the game.
Mhm.
The person came out with it. All it really was is, once again, what makes Kyle Rittenhouse famous? People lying about him all the time.
Hmm.
And so he just was like, "Oh, that's funny. That's why I'm famous." So yeah, sure, you can use my name.
Okay, so the story I heard from David Hancock was that Kyle basically went and approved that game over Dave Hancock's objections. He thought that the game was amateurish, kind of put Kyle in a bad light. The ad was amateurish, and it was.
That was a terrible game.
Terrible game, terrible ad. And he didn't make any money off of it. How much money do you think he made? A couple
Uh,
hundred at most.
negative dollars.
Well, the people who made the game probably lost, but I don't think that Kyle lost any money on it. He just didn't make anything.
Kayla's iPad is almost at 30%.
Okay,
Yeah.
somebody's saying hi.
A guy in his room. Yeah. I know him.
Okay, Rittenhouse's speech at Kent State included a shaky retelling of his 50 minutes of Second Amendment fame, including a mocking impression of his surviving victims. Oh, victim. He's Paul Prediger, formerly known as Gage Grosskreutz. Hey, Gage, you should have just kept your original name, man.
Yeah, what the fuck is
Yeah.
the point of change? I'm sorry, excuse my language. Like
That's all right.
it really boggled my mind when I saw that headline. Why would you change your name and then show up to a Kyle Rittenhouse event, ask the person that was like, one of the people he shot?
More
Eh,
like Paul Predator.
like I don't get it.
Yes.
I don't understand.
And of all the
Did he
names,
have another reason to change his name besides the fact that he was part of a, very famous politically charged trial and he wanted to go away? Like literally he did what I thought Kyle should have done. I thought Kyle should have just kept silent, let things fade away, change his name, go to school, be a nurse, whatever he wanted to do. And then so Gage Grosskreutz, right, instead of trying to ride his life on being a victim or pretending to be a victim when he really was the victimizer, changed his name so that he could go back and just retire into the sunset or whatever. But he still this Kent State. I'm sorry, I'm getting flustered because I just don't get it. I do not get it.
yeah,
Why would he
I
show
agree.
up after the name change?
Yeah. I don't get Paul, but I do get Kyle because, how is he going to make a living if nobody's going to want to hire him?
Well, here's the thing also. I think that Dave Hancock and Paul Prediger, Gage Grosskreutz, are talking at length with each other. And I think that Dave Hancock has gotten Gage really worked up. And so
Yeah.
you'll notice that on social media that he seems to be taking a lot more active interest in engaging people about Kyle Rittenhouse thing. Whereas in the past he was kind of quiet. And I'm wondering if Dave Hancock is, kind of souping that up a bit.
Which is a bad look for him, actually.
Well, I mean, I don't know if well, I don't know what I was going to say about that.
Well, when Gage gets online, he actually curses at people and actually say really bad things about them. He has a really foul mouth. I was surprised. He wasn't like that, when he was quiet. And people could take screenshot and save it and prove it.
He wanted to be an airline pilot. You're thinking of Dominic Black. I mean, Kyle might have, but Dominic Black was the
Oh,
one that wanted to be.
I think Kyle wanted to be an airline pilot as well.
Don't remember that.
Me neither.
Yeah. Yep. When I find it, I'll send it to you.
Okay. Oh, by the way, somebody asked which was worse, acquitted or fake news turkeys or Rittenhouse's turkey shoot. The turkey shoot game. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, dude. Like, if I was gonna make a Kyle Rittenhouse game, I would actually go way more offensive. It would be a Contra style game of Kyle Rittenhouse like going through different levels, killing Antifa members, because that would be
Kayla's
funny.
here.
I think Kyle should have just
Kayla.
stayed away from the video game deal.
Hello.
Kayla's on board.
I'm finally at a 30%. I thought I was charging it on the lightning charger, but I guess I wasn't. I don't know. The chargers switched with the 15 pluses when they came out with those. So it's like really confusing. And the headset jack switched too. And I'm like, so I have to get another pair of headsets. And they don't come with the headsets that come with the new phone or whatever.
I can just picture you, Kayla, waiting for this thing to charge and listening to us talk about Kyle Rittenhouse. Like, come on, hurry up.
Well, I am about to light my cigarette through the stove because I don't know what I did with my lighter.
Oh, and Kayla has a lot of run-ins with Gage.
I'm sorry, what?
Kayla and Gage.
Yeah,
They
tell
have
us
a
about
lot
that,
of.
Kayla. You've had your run-ins, but be careful, okay?
Well, let's just say that he's not a good person at all. 100%. You guys want to go check through various replies on my Twitter?
I am right now.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
So
Well,
he's
a
like,
legit-
isn't he like stalking you, kind of?
Oops.
Like his last name, Predigger Predator?
Yeah. I mean, basically, those parody accounts that they were making with my picture on it and pretending to be me and saying all the threats and harassment and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing. Threatening people online is not a good look.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, Kayla, you've been listening. Any comments on anything we've talked about so far?
Well, everything in those articles are lies.
Kayla is like she just lays it out. I was kind of hoping you'd stall me a little bit more because I'm trying to get my pipe going. And I said, Kayla, what do you think? They're lies.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like she's in agreement with me, right? Like, this is part of what keeps Kyle Rittenhouse in the news is that people keep lying about him.
Oh yeah, but then like they say we're the hateful ones when we're just given the facts. I don't understand.
I mean, of course, that's how they justify their lies.
Like the AR never crossed state lines and it was legal for him to possess. I'm surprised it didn't mention him killing black people because that's a common lie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they still do once in a while.
Occasionally, but that one after 3 years or so, like that one's kind of fallen off the cliff. People realized he wasn't killing black people. But they will say that he wanted to kill black people. He just didn't get the
Yes.
opportunity, even though he was running around with an AR-15 with black people around that he could have shot at the entire
Yellow
night.
Pants was right in front of him.
Waving his gun at them.
Okay,
And
let's
You mean
yeah,
continue on.
so their definition of waving is carrying, right?
I guess so. Because it's an open carry state,
Yeah.
as we all know. And how Rosenbaum and Huber were innocent, which they were not.
No.
I think even Kyle has a little bit of a troll side. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And by the way, as I said, Yellow Pants was right in front of him, trying to taunt him into violence, and Kyle didn't shoot him. So
Just walked away. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Mhm.
okay, so let's see here. Let's go ahead and move on here. He's Paul Prediger, actually here today, ironically, Rittenhouse said. He decided to come to counter protest me. He drove 6.5 hours for this, by the way. Well, you came even further, but okay. The comment
Oh,
grew after.
yeah, but hold on. Paul crossed state lines.
Yep.
Man, I'm going to jail for a long time because I've been crossing state lines my whole life.
Yeah,
Man.
dude, I know that's important.
Yeah.
Like, we should yell at him. Everybody's like, he crossed state lines to be there.
Everyone
Just
does. Everyone does. I
hammer
live by
that
the
in.
Illinois border. Sort of.
So Prediger was not in the audience, but he was on campus earlier that day for a press conference with a coalition of campus groups, including the Spanish and Latinx Student Association, SALSA. Hey guys, I know it makes that a really cool acronym, but I don't think that your association covers Spaniards. No, I don't think people from Spain are involved in your organization. Okay. While he spoke about the shooting for the first time in years, well, okay, Prediger focused most of his speech on Rittenhouse. Kyle has embraced and been embraced by those who peddle hateful rhetoric, who believe in nationalism that excludes those who do not look like or think like them. Kayla, what do you think?
Yes.
Does
About
that sound like Kyle?
no. Not at all.
On so this is the trick they're pulling. Kyle has actually he says he has embraced and been embraced. And I know what they're referring to, right? Is like certain people of the Proud Boys or just some people that were friendly to him that have views that could tangentially be considered hateful rhetoric, could potentially consider a version of nationalism that involves they're just saying white nationalism, right? That's what they're trying to say. Like, there might be people out there in the world that Kyle Rittenhouse has spoken to or been seen with that really has nothing to do with him. They just happen to be around, and that's how they're able to sneak things like this in.
Gage knows better. He's followed my channel enough to know that all these things about the white nationalism
Yeah.
deal are not really quite there. He knows better.
Yeah.
You want to play? You want to play his dealio?
Sure.
Okay. I don't know. Tell me if this sound is coming through or not.
Okay.
Well, I've simply tried to live my life and not relive those moments.
Is the sound coming through?
I can hear it.
Okay. Let me turn it up. I think I can. No, it's turned up pretty much all the way.
Kyle Rittenhouse has taken a different path. He has used every moment to gloat and to make light of taking life. As if that were not enough.
Okay, so he's taken every moment to gloat about taking lives.
What?
I've never heard him gloat.
I haven't either.
Never.
Never.
Kyle has embraced and been embraced by those who peddle hateful rhetoric who believe in nationalism that excludes those who do not look like or think like them, and who have sought to amplify a troubling desire for violence against supposed political, cultural, and religious enemies.
Actually, I gotta pause. When you were reading the article, I realized it was quoted, and I should have been like, "Yes, that was something Gage said." It wasn't the media just being slippery. No, he's just making crap up. That's what's going on here. This is not him trying to weasel or anything. He's just making shit up.
He's just spreading
I'm
lies.
not here.
Go ahead.
He's just spreading lies because that's what the left is doing to Kyle.
He's
Right?
spreading,
If
yeah,
you
and
say-
he's sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Well, he's spreading the same lies because he knows that they'll follow him and believe it.
Yeah,
To
they
sell you a
clearly didn't
book
watch the trial.
somebody else wrote, or a full body
He was
armor
in the
military
trial.
kit that I didn't design, or a subscription to an anti-woke payment processor.
Oh, by the way, though, as a witness, he was not allowed to be in there watching the trial.
Oh,
But of course, he
neat.
could watch
Oh,
it
wow.
after
True.
the thing's over.
Or to sell you the lies of BLM. That speaker
What?
is across
Wait,
campus
wait.
today.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Sell you the lies of BLM? It's the lies of the media, not the lies of the BLM.
Let me go back and play it again.
Tell you the lies of BLM.
Uh,
A full body armor military kit that I didn't design, or a subscription to an anti-woke payment processor, or to sell you the lies of BLM.
Okay, so there's a few things here. He claims that Kyle didn't write his own book, and as I've said a million times,
Nobody
don't write
writes
your own
their own book.
autobiography. You
Not too
just
many
don't.
people do that.
It's
Yeah.
really hard to write your own autobiography because it's like writing your own letter recommendation. If you ever
Mhm.
had to do that, you'll find out it's really difficult to do. And Kyle's not a writer, but then again, almost all of the people who have autobiographies never wrote their book. I mean,
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton didn't write her own book. Neither did
Obama didn't
Michelle
write
Obama.
his book. Like basically every time political season comes along and there's a major candidate, right? A book comes out about them, and it's their book, and it's written as them being the author for the book, but they're never really the author. It was all done by a ghostwriter.
Mhm.
I know it. And to
That's
me, it's so
standard
funny
practice.
that the left, who are supposed to be the enlightened ones, right? The intelligentsia, they don't know this.
No,
Okay,
they've lost that mantle. They can keep trying to pretend like they have it, but they've lost it. I
And
think there
all these
might have been a.
people. Oh, go ahead.
I
I'm
said I
sorry.
think there might have been a time like in the mid 90s through the early 2000s throughout the Bush era where you could give the left some credit for that, especially on very specific issues like civil rights issues and whatnot. But they've lost that. It's completely gone. The left is all about the ends justify the means. They don't care what the means are. They will lie like crazy. They don't care what the facts are. It's just about getting to the ends.
damn, that one went down. Okay,
That speaker is across campus today, and his name is Kyle Rittenhouse. And for an extra $37, he'll even autograph his book for you.
so what? Nobody's forcing them to pay it.
He's the one that wanted to sell his picture and want like $30 for a picture of his arm.
Oh yeah.
What?
Wow.
I was like, yeah, Gage. I mean, Paul. He's trying to raise money to fend off frivolous lawsuits from dipshits like you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. He's the one responsible for Kyle being at the campus. If anybody,
I know, like he's one of the exactly. Like you created him. You're the one that put a Glock to his head.
Yes.
okay. So Predator
Let's-
exited the press conference before the audience of journalists and activists could ask him any questions. TPUSA had a representative in the audience, apparently ready to ask a question. Okay, what about that? It's like, so what? I mean, this is the problem with this author. He makes a statement. TPUSA had a person out there was ready to ask a question, and what? Why are you telling us this? I don't know. After the press conference, the student group held a teach-in at Oscar Ritchie Hall. More of a bitch-in, because that's basically what it was, right? Everybody crying and sniveling about the guy across the way there giving a speech. Notice they never tell you what the actual topic was. A building that also houses the university's Department of Africana Studies. Okay. At least I'll give it up to them. They're doing a teach-in. They're not going in and trying to stop Kyle from being able to speak. So I don't have any problem with the teach-in. I just kind of find it funny they call it that when in reality, and back in the 70s it probably was, but you know what it was. Them all gathering around and crying to each other.
They all went to a safe space while Kyle spoke.
In an interview with the Progressive, oh good grief, not this guy, Yassine Shaikh, the president of the Kent State chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine. Yeah, because that's a real relevant group here, right? What is it? What does any of this have to do with Palestine?
Exactly.
I mean, okay, okay. So let's suppose that he just happens to be the chapter president. Then don't mention it. Just say Yassine Shaikh, a student at Kent State. Why mention the Students for Justice in Palestine? It's not relevant. Oh, says that much of the student body was not happy about having a gun rights advocate like Kyle Rittenhouse on campus.
All they actually did, like by including Students for Palestine, like you can actually extrapolate the political positions of the people that are members of that group.
Oh, sure.
All they did is actually admit the bias of this person's statement. That's it.
Yeah, it shows it's political.
Johnny, Liquidator in chat says Prediger's account needs to be ID verified.
What do you mean? I mean, what's the point of that? I mean, I'm not quite seeing the big picture of that.
He should have been. He would have to be. I don't know. He just wanted me to point it out to you for some reason.
Okay. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what that means. I mean, I know what IP is and everything. I just don't know what the impact of being IP verified means.
ID verified.
ID. I thought you said IP verified. I'm
No.
thinking like, okay. Okay, so
that he's
the point
real,
is
I
that
guess.
that might not be actually Gage Grosskreutz on Twitter. I believe it is. However, you're right. I haven't proven it.
Sorry, I've never been ID verified, so I don't know much about it.
I
The
am.
process, yeah.
Yep. Thanks to him. And I also like the color pink. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The media really tried to turn this into Crystal Night, long knives. It didn't work. Okay, I think the Crystal Knocked I can understand. I'm not certain about the long knives deal, but I get it. I get your idea. I get what you're trying to say. What you're saying. Sorry, I didn't mean to demean it. All right, here we go. And that's also because it's an affront to Kent State's history. Of course, you probably know about May 4th, 1970. The National Guard came here and shot several students. Okay. What did I say? Kent State was probably one campus I think Kyle probably should not have gone to. What do you think?
I have mixed feelings on that. I just, it's one of those things where like a tragedy happened in a place, like we're talking 54 years ago now, and we're still going to use that as an excuse for, not having this person because of something actually completely unrelated, completely different than what happened that day. But it did involve a gun. That's the only commonality. Like I'm not really sure that should be a reason to say, oh, don't go to this campus to talk.
But that doesn't make sense because if they're using a shooter is using a gun, wouldn't you, isn't it what Kyle is saying that you should have a gun so you could take out the shooter, right?
Well, they
Yeah, you
can't.
could make that argument. It's just like, yeah, it would have been great if somebody with a gun actually spotted the sniper and was able to like take a crack shot at him and stop the massacre.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. So keep in mind, um, Kyle's there for Second Amendment rights. It was the National Guard that shot up the students. I mean, it was government, right? And everybody says, "Well, no, that's militia."
That's why
No,
I'm
the
saying it's
National Guard is not
completely
militia.
different.
And the other thing is that, and I did a story on this some time ago, but you had a whole bunch of National Guardsmen marching in unison. It's really hot. They can't see because they're wearing their not
Helmet.
oxygen masks. Gas masks, right? And people are throwing things at them. They're on alert, and somebody opens fire. And this, what they call sentimental shots, right? You hear somebody shoot, and you naturally start shooting yourself. And that's what happened. And obviously, I'm not defending it, but the whole idea that the National Guard went there, took up positions, and just started firing on protesters. And by the way, I think most of the protesters were actually shot with ricochets. But
Yeah, I mean that's why I have a really hard time just saying like the only commonality between those events is that guns were involved.
yeah.
And that's why I have a really hard time saying Kyle shouldn't go to Kent State just because he did something with a gun and other things happened with a gun that was a tragedy 54 years ago. I I just have a hard time using that as it's a reason why he should have said, well, out of all campuses, I'm not going to go there. I understand that because it's predictable because the same people that attack Kyle are leftists and they're doing everything they can to blame the gun, right? They've already gotten to the point where they can blame the parents, right? They're one step away from being able to blame the retailer that sold the gun.
I wonder if Kyle even know about the shooting.
I'm sure he did at least after he booked the event.
I mean, he should know, right? But it's not exactly an unknown. It's a pretty big deal in history. But, you know, keep in mind, from their viewpoint, there's another commonality, and that was that protesters were shot.
Oh, okay.
From their viewpoint.
So there were protesters and guns in the same place. So
yeah, and protesters were shot by, and in their mind, right wing. It's the National Guard. These are the squares. I could see, and I said it. I think it was just a bad look. I would not have advised him doing that. And I don't think he should have went out there and said, "I'm not going to Kent State," because I think he could have just quietly decided, "No, let's not go there."
Yeah.
Sympathetic fire.
there's
Yeah, sorry.
there's
I think
certainly
I said
something to
sentimental
say.
fire.
There's certainly something to say for pick your battles, but that's not going to be the Kyle Rittenhouse story. So let's just give that up. He's not going to pick his battles. He's going to go to whatever battle that he's invited into.
Okay. The audience for Rittenhouse was a mix of older alumni, community members, and students. Yeah, that's pretty much the audience for just about every campus speech. Many had pro Second Amendment t shirts on. Oh my gosh. They had pro
The horror.
t shirts on.
God
One even
forbid.
wore a t shirt that had an image from the video of Rittenhouse carrying his AR 15 with FAFO in capital letters. Okay, FAFO stands for. Trying to find, oh my God.
I know.
I can't believe this is like leftists telling us the horrors of people showing up with provocative slogans on their t-shirts. They even had the F-bomb, but they didn't even have the F-bomb. It was just an acronym. That F stands for the F word. These are the leftists telling us that we need a dress code here.
What's funny, and then they go through three things. It's a phrase among militias, Proud Boys, and other right wing groups. Like those are supposed to be scare words
Mm-hmm.
that only scare the left. I listened to it. I was like, militias are fine. Proud Boys, most light about group ever, and other right wing groups. And I was like, well, there's nothing wrong with being right wing. It's about
And,
half the country.
yeah. And by the way, FAFO I think is pretty popular amongst a lot of groups. I don't think it's
Yeah,
necessarily a right wing thing.
Exactly.
yeah, it's not.
And by look at the terror, those evil terrorists that are showing up at the campus. Oh my God!
I know. Well, I don't know,
January 6th,
dude.
2.0.
There's a lot of white people in the crowd, so that's probably problematic.
Yeah.
It's January 6th, 2.0.
The hall slowly filled up just moments before Rittenhouse took to the stage. Yeah, halls tend to do that when you have a speaker coming with his therapy dog, and they always have to bring up the dog. They
I know.
that dog really gets to them.
I don't see how. He's so cute.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a golden retriever. Good grief, you can't get more docile.
Well, so the funny thing about that is, like in any other context, these people would be all about the idea of therapy animals
Mm.
because
Mhm.
that's something that like it's a huge left wing cause of expanding rights to people that have therapy animals, right? To allow the
Right.
dogs on the plan,
Mhm.
to allow the dogs in all these different places. But Kyle Rittenhouse has one, and they got to bring it up like they're making fun of him, and I'm like, that doesn't
Mhm.
make any sense.
It's mean.
And here's my also advice to you writers: don't do this. Don't give a just a line by line narrative of what happened. The hall slowly filled up. He took the stage. Who cares? I mean, it's almost like he's walking with his little, like, dictating to himself line by line what's happening around him. Nobody cares about that. Make it interesting.
Well, actually, the problem is that I'm pretty sure the events that were, if we were to rehash this in just regular words, this is actually a very uninteresting thing that happened. Outside the fact that left wingers freaked out.
Well, I mean, but you can make it interesting somehow. That's your job as a writer. Hey, how about some, figurative language? How about some metaphor? How about, imagery? Kyle Rittenhouse took the stage. The wispy mustache, whatever. Describe him. He seems nervous. He's stammered. Do something. But this, like the
Well,
hall, up. They opened the doors. The people walked in. It's just good
well,
grief.
well, Johnny, these are leftist writers, so I think you are holding them to too high of a standard.
For example, I remember I wrote that thing on Pudgies, right? And I said the what was it? The black Labrador walked around looking for attaboys and even walked by Kyle, uninterested. Okay, that's a little bit interesting, right? You're characterizing what's going on, but here it's just like, oh my, I would have turned this thing down and said, look, this is just so dull. Okay, here we go. Many in the room were members of campus groups that earlier in the day had decried Rittenhouse being allowed to speak on campus. All right. So many in the room were hostile to Kyle, as we would have expected. There were at least 8 black suited security guards in the hall. I don't care. 3 were
Mhm.
stationed near Rittenhouse and 5 throughout the room. Okay, yeah, if 3 were near Rittenhouse, I guess the other 5 would be around the room. No guns were allowed in the auditorium. Okay, you know what? Maybe that is a little controversial. Kyle Rittenhouse, he's pro Second Amendment, and he shows up, and they're not allowing guns in the auditorium. Hey, maybe you could talk about that, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Of course, we all know that that is not Kyle's doing. Guns are not
Yeah.
allowed in this college campus.
That's the campus rules. Yeah, that had nothing to do with Kyle. It's so dishonest to even
But at least you,
portray it that it had anything to do with Kyle or even mention it. In
by
fact,
the
I'm
way,
sure Kyle would have been like, everybody that has a lawfully owned firearm should be able to keep it in. Like he would have no qualms whatsoever with them having that firearm in the auditorium. They could have all had AR-15 strapped to their backs, and he would have been okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
and by the way,
I'll be right.
I'm
I'll be
tired
right
of
back.
people. Hmm? Okay.
Okay.
I'm tired of people saying the right wing a bunch of overweight. Like, okay, sure. The questions during the short Q&A were mostly friendly, except for one student who asked him if by showing up in Kenosha with a gun in 2020, which was already tense after 2 days of unrest, he believed he was actually helping the situation. Rittenhouse responded by citing the number of BLM protesters that also had firearms, gaining applause from his friendly audience. Okay, at least that's somewhat interesting. All right.
Uh, Isn't there actually like some objective evidence that whenever people like Kyle showed up to resist the protesters, that the damage and amount of rioting went down?
Um,
I
I
thought
don't think
I thought I heard something about that, like, but I
I
could
don't
be
think
wrong.
we needed the evidence. I mean, they burned half the damn town down on the second night. On the third night, there was relatively little. I mean, it's that much is obvious. I think Nathan DeBruin, um, when I made that statement, Nathan said, "Yep, that's right," and Nathan was there. In
Yeah,
fact, there
I
was
know.
very little. There was very little arson taking place on the third night. And I'll say this: I think the guards had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it's it's not a secret that armed resistance works. Like
Right.
that's what we use. We use it to secure stores with private security guards. We use it to I mean, secure our cities from crime with our police. We use it to secure our country with military. Like armed resistance, we know works. It is at least effective on some level. Uh, so it shouldn't be a surprise as soon as armed resistance shows up against these protesters, quote unquote, that they stop burning shit down.
I think they might be writing it as a narrative like that because they viewed it as a dramatic, because a right wing person, Kyle, was there. Yeah, I don't know about that. I think the guy just can't write. This is, and by the way, this is very typical of early writers. They want to just tell what happened. But,
All right, I'm back.
I can always go and look up and Wikipedia what happened.
Mhm.
Tell me something that I don't know. And in here, this really boils down to Kyle Rittenhouse showed up, gave a speech. A lot of people weren't happy about it. The end.
Mhm.
Okay,
that's the actual story.
that pretty much. Audience members were asked to stay in their seats while the exit, which led through an area where dozens of protesters were assembled, was secured. The student from the earlier press conference refused, eventually shouldering through the blocked exit. Oh my God, they got through a door. This is exciting stuff. They were met with cheers from the assembled protesters. Yay! They got out. They opened the door all by themselves. There must be something important about that. I don't know. As the pro Rittenhouse members of the audience left, they were met with jeers from the protesters who had been waiting, holding signs and yelling "killer," like as what has happened at every one of these events. Many from the audience stuck around to debate with the protesters. Really? Gee, wouldn't it have been nice if he had listened in and reported on what the arguments were about. That would have been interesting. For example, one dude in a dress was making the argument, whatever. Law enforcement. Look, I'm a writer.
Johnny,
And
why did it have to be a dude in a dress? That's too good. Because it probably was a dude in a dress, because that just shows you the kind of
who was
people that
the
were on
pro
that
Second
side.
Amendment person, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, it also could have been an interesting thing to talk about how the two groups seemed to appear different, right? They're dressed differently,
Right.
they act
Mhm.
differently, they have different demographics. That would have been interesting.
Oh, you could
Yeah.
show up and ask people from both groups the same set of questions and see the different responses. That's interesting. I like hearing that.
Okay, but here we
Because I
got the
know they're
finale.
living in two different realities, so I would love to hear the two realities that everybody's coming from.
Well, we have the final statement, the finale, guys. You get ready for this. This is high drama because this is where you want to leave the audience gasping. It states law enforcement stuck around until both sides dispersed to their cars and dorms.
They're just like, that's another way of saying, and nothing else of significance happened.
No, law enforcement is still there, right? They didn't stick around, and they're still there holding the line. Of course, they stuck around till both sides dispersed, but okay, so I kind of messed that up. But but I mean, why end your story like this? Law enforcement stuck around until both sides dispersed. Okay, badly written, terrible. And okay, I would expect maybe this from my freshman English Comp 101 C grade paper. That's how I would look at this. And you've gone through K-12. You've been taught similes, metaphors, all kinds of figurative language, and you use none of it. This is not a report. I mean, this is not a news report. This is supposed to be an op-ed. And yet there's no character to this writing whatsoever. It's just boring. Yeah, well. So Zach Roberts, you suck as a writer. Give it up. You'll never be anything as a writer. You need to go back and learn some hooks and techniques.